when we became a republic. And Sir Ellis Clark, the first president, continued to live there. He had lived there as Governor General, and he continued to live there.
Signifies the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
I, Ellis Emmanuel Innocent Clark.
In addition to being the President's private residence, the house was used for diplomatic receptions, national awards, and swearing-in ceremonies. It was occupied by the President of the Republic until 2010, when disaster.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter or call
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 13th public meeting of the Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of the 13th public meeting of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee for the 11th Parliament is to seek further information on the 2017 expenditure and internal controls of the Tobago House of Assembly as it pertains to the following: inventory control, internal audit, accountability and transparency, subhead 02 goods and services, subhead 03 minor equipment purchases, subhead 04 current transfers and subsidies, subhead 09 Development Program Consolidated Fund. This meeting is being held in public and will be broadcast live on the Parliament's channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel ParlView. The committee is desirous of hearing from the Chief Administrator and other key officials of the Tobago House of Assembly to discover the challenges being faced and determine possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to assist the department to achieve efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. I therefore now invite the Tobago House of Assembly to introduce their members.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. I am Ray Sand, the Chief Administrator, Tobago House of Assembly.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. I am Claire Davidson-Williams, Administrator for the Division of Finance and the Economy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Cindy Hackett. I am the Auditor today of the Tobago House of Assembly Internal Audit Department.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Esther Pilgrim-Sones, Director of Finance, Division of Finance and Enterprise. Finance and Economy, sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Patala Ann Roberts. I'm the Senior Financial Analyst at the Division of Finance and the Economy.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I am Shelley Trim. I'm the Budget Analyst 4 in the Division of Finance and the Economy.
Good afternoon to the Chair and members. I am Bobby Andrews, Planning Coordinator, THA.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I am Alistair Taylor, Chairman, Border Survey Committee, Tobago House of Assembly.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I am Bernice Jack Edwards, Accounting Executive at the Division of Finance and the Economy.
Thank you very much. And I therefore now invite members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting with my extreme right.
Good afternoon. Daniel Dupuy is my name, and I'm a member of the committee.
Good afternoon. Senator Dineshwar Mahavir, member.
Good afternoon. Welcome again. Lakram Bodo, Vice Chairman.
Good afternoon. Ayana Webster Roy, member.
Good afternoon. Alison Bash, member.
And I am Bridget Anizet George, Chairman, and we are ably assisted by our Acting Assistant Secretary, Ms. Shuran Samuel, and by Committee Clerk, Ms. Candice Scarrett. I therefore now will invite Mr. Sandy, as the Chief Administrator, to make an opening statement.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chairman and members of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. The team from the Tobago House of Assembly that is gathered here today was selected based on the areas identified for examination by the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. The Tobago House of Assembly is a complex organization consisting of the Assembly Legislature, Office of the Chief Secretary, and 9 divisions, each with its own portfolio of responsibilities as defined in Schedule 5 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act of 1996. Each division of the Tobago House of Assembly operates similar to a ministry in central government, with its accounting officer, who in the case of the THA is an administrator, and its semi-autonomous accounting, human resources, information technology, and other units necessary for the efficient functioning of the division. In its current configuration, the divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly are the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Labor, the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, the Division of Food Production, Forestry and Fisheries, the Division of Finance and the Economy, the Division of Settlements, Urban Renewal and Public Utilities, the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Services, the Division of Tourism, Culture and Transportation, the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy, and last but not least, the Division of Youth Affairs and Sports. Each division is under the general direction and control of the Secretary, who has been assigned to that division. And as the most senior public servant of the Tobago House of Assembly, the Chief Administrator exercises general administrative oversight over all divisions. I emphasize this fact to indicate that when a team such as this appears before this August committee, our knowledge of the specific operations of the Tobago House of Assembly may not be as comprehensive as our knowledge of our specific operations in the divisions from which we came and for which we are intimately familiar. The team before you today is knowledgeable and seized of information relevant to today's examination, as we have a very good grasp of the operations of the various divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. We have gathered as much information as we could in the areas identified for this hearing. We will respond to your questions with the information that we have researched, and if our responses are not adequate or do not meet the standard of specificity that you require, if necessary, we will willingly provide the detailed information that you require via written response, perhaps at a later date. Another significant departure from what is the practice in ministries and in central government is the way parliamentary allocations are treated with at the Tobago House of Assembly. More often than not, after the national budget is read, the Executive Council of the Tobago House of Assembly reallocates resources in accordance with the THA's priorities, bearing in mind that the Tobago House of Assembly, by law, would have submitted its budgetary request to the Ministry of Finance in June preceding the passage of the national budget. The eventual allocation to the various divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly sometimes vary from the parliamentary allocations, especially in the public sector investment program. I brought these two issues to the fore so that an appreciation of the difficulties that we, as members of the administration of the Tobago House of Assembly, face at the public accounts, at the PAC, in the circumstances when the THA appears, in our respectful view, to be treated similar to a ministry of central government. As we participate in this important exercise, our hope is that we provide you with all the information that you require as we continue to provide oversight of the activities of the various arms of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. That's my opening statement, Madam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandy. And leading off from your introductory statement, you listed the various divisions, which you say are autonomous divisions, and you identified them. I wanted to ask, if prior to the new council coming into being, if those were the very said divisions, or if there has been a realignment of divisions since?
There has been a realignment of divisions. Some major, some minor, but there has been a realignment.
And let's just focus on the major. In terms of the major realignment, having regard to the fact that you had indicated that these divisions are all autonomous, I guess they all have their budgets, and so how has that impacted on the the operations of the assembly and of the various divisions?
Well, it's a little difficult administratively, in the sense that, let's give you an example. Prior to the realignment, we had a division of community development, culture, and with the realignment, culture has been moved to the tourism unit. So it's now tourism and culture. So the allocations for the culture part of that division still remain with that division. So even though they are now separated, we still have to administratively treat them as though they were still together. And we are hoping that, not hoping, but we are expecting that in September, October, when the new budget is read, the new divisions or the realigned divisions would have their budget in accordance with the realignment. So currently we are straddling.
And therefore, could you give us some practical challenges that would result for your various administrators and also for you as chief administrator coming out of this realignment?
Well, okay. As chief administrator and the administrator for the office of the chief secretary, before the alignment, I had the unit of occupational safety and health. With the realignment, occupational safety and health has now gone to community development, enterprise development, and labor. As we try to mimic nationally where OSH was. OSH is with the Ministry of Labor here. So we have placed the OSH department with the Department of Labor. The administrative difficulties I have is the budget for OSH is with me, and administratively they are not with me. So they have to apply for example, as we speak, this afternoon they're having their annual awards. And they had to come to me, basically, for funding for the preparation and so on of these awards. That's just one area of
And therefore, have any systems, mechanisms been put in place? Because I'm sure that certain inefficiencies would result. Have you identified any mechanisms to bridge those difficulties in the short term?
Well, yes, in the sense that I've appealed to administrators who have overall responsibility for accounting for these units to try to accommodate those units that used to be associated with that division and are no longer with them. So we try our best to accommodate the request for goods and services from those units as though they were still with us, even though we know that administratively we have no administrative control over them. So it's a give and take, and we understand it's going to last perhaps as long as up to September, till the end of the financial year, and then with the new financial year we'd have that whole situation sorted out.
Okay, Member Webster Roy, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Chief Administrator, has the realignment posed any challenges for auditing?
Can I ask the auditor to please respond to that?
No, Ms. Roy, it has not posed any challenges since all the vote books, all the accounting is done at the previous divisions. We would audit as usual because all the vouchers, everything would go at the previous division.
When was the last audit taken?
It depends on what kind of audit. We do various audits. Right now we are doing examination of vote books. at the various divisions of the THA. So at present, we are doing vote book examinations.
Is there a risk register?
Not to my knowledge, Ms. Roy.
Are there plans to establish one?
Can you repeat the question?
Are there plans to establish a risk register?
I think, Madam Member, the risk register is, to my knowledge, we should be doing risk-based auditing, but the division's supposed to do risk register so that we can audit. And to my knowledge, there is no risk register at the divisions.
Have you, as auditor, made that recommendation?
I would have done that when we had the previous administrator, Dr. Ellis Boris, and he would have sent memos to the various divisions to create one, but to date, we have not had any.
Chief Ad, the former administrator, Chief Ad, would have left quite a while ago, and no one implemented that recommendation, which is quite crucial. What plans or what steps would you take to ensure that that recommendation is adhered to?
Well, quite frankly, I was not aware of a specific recommendation. I've been there. Dr. Boris would have left our office last week. Would have made it exactly 3 years since I'm Chief Administrator in Tobago. And I was not aware of that specific recommendation, but certainly, now that I've been made aware, I will certainly ensure that, that we proceed along those lines.
Member Duque.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to these changes, some which the Chief Administrator described as minor and some as major, how have these changes affected your overall issue of staffing?
The staffing issue has not changed much in the sense that the units have moved with their staff, so to speak. There was the creation of a new division, the Division of Youth Affairs and Sports. It used to be Education, Youth Affairs and Sports, and now split into 2 divisions. So we have a new Division of Youth Affairs and Sports. And that division operates as a division, but without the necessary support in terms of accounting and so on. So that is something that we'll have to treat in the future from September. They still share accounts with the old education division. But I am aware that when I used to be permanent secretary in Trinidad, that a number of ministries used to share some of these kinds of arrangements. I remember when I was at Science and Tech, and then we had tertiary education and so on, we had them sharing accounting units and so on. So it's not unusual for that to happen. In fact, it might be more cost effective depending on the size of the division and so on. So all of these are challenges that we'd have to treat with as we move closer to October.
And any major issues regarding accommodation? How are the staff housed as they move?
Yes, we have some challenges there, and we are seeking to treat those challenges.
With success?
Not with much success so far. The same challenge we have with Youth Affairs and Sport. They are still sharing the same premises, the same building, and so on. But we are working towards treating with those issues.
Thank you, ma'am.
But Mr. Sandy, I understand that. But could you tell us, with the difficulties and the challenges you have identified, it seems that the new fiscal year is your sort of benchmark for the changes. Could you tell us, and maybe you need to put it in writing, as far as the active steps that have been taken to ensure that come the new fiscal year, there will be a complete realignment in terms of the administrative responsibilities, the staffing, the accommodation for the new units? What active steps are being taken to ensure that that will happen by fiscal 2017-2018?
I can speak to the issue of accommodation and so on, and I know that we are actively looking around within the Tobago House of Assembly to find adequate accommodation. We have this situation at our now famous Millshave complex, and 3 or 4 divisions are supposed to be moving in there. I almost said hopefully. They should be moving in there sometime in the next 2 to 3 months. A contract is about to be awarded for outfitting of those that building. So with that eventuality, we should have some additional accommodation to treat the realignment and so on. So I don't see that as a major challenge. In terms of the accounting part of it, I can ask perhaps the senior financial analyst or the director of finance to treat with the issue of the new budget lines and so on. Director, could you address that?
Good afternoon. We have an issue with the bank right now where the bank is not recognizing our new names. So we have to put it in writing for them, and we needed approval from the Executive Council to adopt the new names. I understand that would have been done this week, and then moving forward, we will inform the bank because we need to get new checkbooks, we need to get the new names on the accounts, and then it may impact on the financial statements. So hence the reason it was easier to move forward at 30/9 with the existing structure and then adopt the new structure from 110, right? So that we wouldn't have to prepare 2 financial statements. So there's where.
In terms of what is the reality is not really being reflected in what you do. Now, how long ago would have been the new divisions would have been created?
The election was the 23rd of January, so when at the election, those new, the 26th was when the instruments, the secretaries will have gotten instruments for the new divisions, right? At that point in time, we were not familiar with the impact that will happen, whereas certain units under certain divisions will be moving, right? As the chief administrator said just now, with the moving of the different, with some of the units, and we now having to account for payments at the existing division, we have, treating it that way would have mitigate any further or any problems going forward. So it was decided that we will move forward just as we are doing now, and then at the end of the fiscal, then we will make changes.
With the way you're operating, would that be in accordance with the financial regulations that govern you?
Well, we have not made, we are making the payments under the how Parliament approve. The payments are being made how Parliament approve because we don't have any other, we haven't made the changes, right? So Parliament approved, as Chief said, under one division, we will have different heads and subheads, sub-items. But when you move out a unit to a different division and you come back now, you're making the payment under the existing division because we don't have any Parliament approval to make the changes. Right, so based on that, I will say what we are working with now is with the regulations.
And are there going to be, based on those inconsistencies, are there going to be any sort of accounting challenges that will, say, permit incorrect entries, possible problems in reconciling what is the fact from the fiction?
Okay. Yes, Chair, we anticipate that there will be, but we have accounting monitoring officers who go out on a daily basis to reconcile with the other divisions.
And that would be fed into
the financial statements.
All right. So let me just, for a moment, because the initial statement has really sent us in various directions. And I do remember the Chief Administrator telling us that the team here has come specifically to answer the remit. But just if you will just permit me, again, coming from the initial statement of the Chief Administrator, with respect to the reallocation by the THA of the allocation by the Parliament. So I get the impression, and you will correct me, that one, there's a certain approval by the Parliament of your allocation, and then there is, according to the words of the Chief Administrator, a reassignment by the Tobago House of Assembly in accordance with its priorities. Might I ask, what is the authority for that?
The way I understand it is that the Executive Council of the Tobago House of Assembly, which sort of mimics the cabinet here, they have the authority to make those kinds of decisions. I know that there's always been a debate about whether or not the Tobago House of Assembly should come back to Parliament when those changes are made and so on, but I'm not going to get involved in that. But I know that the Exec Council makes those decisions, and we abide by those decisions of the Exec Council.
Okay, and how is that affected? By virements? By what? How is that affected?
By transfer of funds. Yeah.
Might I ask just one other general question? In terms of, for the Assembly, your submissions of your audited financial statements and your administrative reports to the Parliament up to date?
Madam Chair, in terms of our audited reports, the Auditor General has completed the audit of the 2015. So the Auditor General, the last audit was 2015. They ran 2015 and 2009 concurrently so that they can try to fill that gap. We have received the management letter for 2015, but we have not received for 2009. We are in the process of responding to 2015 at present. That should be completed by the end of the month. And we are awaiting the Auditor General's report from 2009. So we have laid all financial statements up to 2015.
And as far as the administrative reports?
I cannot speak to that. I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair, our administrative reports are submitted on an annual basis.
So that your last submission would have been for when?
2016.
Thank you very much. Member Dukia, I think we can now go into inventory control. I'll ask you if you want to lead off the discussion.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In your submission, you stated that the inventory register is checked occasionally. Could you explain what occasionally means in your practice, in your reality?
No? We try to check the inventory. If you are speaking about the fixed assets, right? We try to check it at least once per financial year because of the fact that we have 10 divisions to check and other audits to be done. We try to do it at least once per year.
And once per year, have you found that to be working? Have you found that to be delivering the kind of results that you want?
No, sir.
And how do you propose to address that?
I would have brought it to the attention of the Chief Administrator, who is the accounting officer, that we would need to get more staff in order to be more effective in our duties.
All right. In terms of your tagging function, and again dealing with inventory control and inventory management, what are the reasons for all items not being tagged? What are the specific reasons for that occurrence?
I must admit that the asset registers of the Tobago House of Assembly are not where they should be. And currently we are engaged in discussions with a supplier of electronic, a web-based system to assist us with inventory, with asset management. And noted before the Executive Council to engage that supplier. The specific question you asked about the tagging, I really have no good answer for that, in the sense that we have tagged some pieces of the assets and some just have not been tagged. We are very I should say, deficient in a general sense with respect to inventory of our assets.
And you mentioned the web-based solution. How would that address some of these shortcomings we are identifying?
Well, one, we'll be using the technology that's available to us now, where we can tag some of the items electronically, and we will have not only an electronic tag, but we'll be able to identify wherever they are within the system. Part of the challenge we have in the public services, we tag items and persons can move items, except for very large items, from room to room, division to division, and so on. And it really makes it extremely difficult to keep a tag or to keep an account of every piece of equipment or item that belongs to the Tobago House of Assembly. Recognizing that, we explored, and our advice is that the web-based system is a good system to treat with that particular problem.
So you're confident that the web-based system would deal with that?
Yes, I'm confident of that.
Member Coffey, sorry, may I just ask Member Coffey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, I just wanted to delve more deeply into the issue of the inventory. Now, you say in some divisions, department, registers have not been kept. I was trying to ascertain from your response whether it's a problem of delinquent individuals or people who aren't properly trained, or whether there are divisions or departments where it is not being done. So whether it's based on individuals or based on divisions or departments?
I would say it's a combination of all of the above, in the sense that one of the challenges we face in the public service is frequent movement of persons, and we in the system that we operate, we don't have an individual, an office that is called property manager or something like that. So in our system, we use administrative officers or some persons in account as the custodian of the registers, and frequent movement of those persons, together with what I should say, not enough focus on that particular area, causes us to lapse at times. So it's a real challenge, and it's something that we are trying to deal with.
Okay. I just want to stick a little bit here. Now, you mentioned that you're looking at a web-based solution. Now, how was this procured? Because there are several ministries, departments, agencies who are also looking at who have similar problems. And did you check iGov, or was there any consideration or consultation with other ministries, divisions, agencies in terms of looking at the best web-based solution for your needs? How did you go about? What was the procurement process?
When I joined the Tobago House of Assembly 3 years ago, this process had already started with the same provider, and the pilot project was done. Soon after I went into office, a pilot project was done, and we continued that process. In terms of procurement of the provider, I really cannot speak to that because the provider was procured before I went on board. I don't know if any member of staff here has more information than I have on that.
Chair members, the information that I got with respect to the procurement is that two suppliers were evaluated. One did not meet the need of the assembly, and the other supplier was accepted. There was no tender process because it was within the limits of the then chief administrator.
All right, Member Mahavir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, When I visit some supermarkets and some clothing stores, I see they tag a simple bottle of alcohol that you can't really take out of the store unless you have paid for it and it has been removed by the cashier. This is not web-based. This is an electronic tag that is placed on very small items. Is it that you have considered such a procedure as opposed to the more advanced web-based? What is the feasibility or the practicality of putting some of the tags on your computers and so on? Or is it that you have not considered this supermarket/clothing store model in the THA?
Remember, the web-based TMA is but a product and will certainly, based on what we've seen, will operate in that similar fashion. Web-based just meaning that it will employ the computer technology that will put the different items onto the system electronically. Currently, the registers would require you writing the serial numbers, getting the information. When we use the technology, it will then capture the information from a barcode, similar to what you're speaking about.
Can we expect this technology to be implemented by the THA?
There is a note before the Executive Council that will give us the authority to finally engage. But however, as the Chief Administrator said, there was a pilot system engaged at the Office of the Chief Secretary that showed that this seemed to be working well.
Member Coffey?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, how long have you been at the THA?
3 years.
Okay. 3 years, and you said when you came, you met the system being deployed. So it hasn't completed deployment in 3 years?
Three years ago, when I joined, they were about to start the pilot project. The pilot project for about a year. We evaluated it, and it took some time. And as I said, we are now in the process of doing the final engagement of the provider. It took us some time in negotiating the financial terms, and that is what is before the Executive Council now for approval.
No, I have heard from other agencies here that the problem with using a web-based solution is that sometimes those solutions need to be work with the normal register. So it's not a replacement. How do you ensure that you observe all the requirements of the law in terms of the Exchequer and Audit Act and all the facts that apply to the Office of the Chief Administrator while you go to web-based or you maintain a register, because you need to have an actual register according to the law?
Member, my understanding of it is that the web-based system can be queried to produce those records that are required under the Audit and Exchequer Act. That would be a part of the system. So we'd have if you for want of a better word, a hard copy of the assets coming out of that system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just want to ask, in the meantime, Mr. Sandy, one, the web-based seems to be the solution. And you have a note before your Executive Council. Have the funds been identified and allocated for this web-based system?
The funds have not yet been allocated, but I believe that the Executive Council will identify the funds.
So the point about it is, as we speak, we're not sure when we would institute the web base, even though we understand it's desirable ASAP.
Madam Chair, I'm fairly confident that the Tobago House of Assembly will approve the request that we have made to them.
All right. So let me ask you something. In terms of getting to the web base, as we speak now, I just wanted to look at your inventory control procedure, where you say that there are stock cards in each of the various divisions, and you capture specific data. So your stock cards show disbursements, they show receipts, and you've set out what they show. Is there any provision for signing off by the person who has authorized the disbursement, or signing by the person who has received the item?
Madam Chair, I think if we are speaking about inventory as it relates to stock, yes, there is that system where you would buy stock, the stockkeeper would issue stock, where people would have to sign because you have to do in-house requisition. But in the case, if you are speaking about asset like desk and computers, they have different sections that are responsible for buying these items and issuing it to the various sections, and they would keep note of it.
But, you know, in the submission, and thank you, in the submission, and when you had set out the specific data, there is no way in any of the stock cards you have referred to that there's any sort of signing off by any individual, so that in doing your audit, you can say, well, yes, this item was received by so-and-so, or the disbursement was authorized by so-and-so. So what I'm trying to find out is that factual, or it might have been an omission in your submission?
Madam Chair, I think in the submission, they would have thought that the questions that they were asking about were the fixed asset. But in the case of where you buy stocks as it relates to books, pens, and stuff, we do have a system where the divisions would do in-house requisition, which must be signed by the head of that department in order to get stock.
Under the head for materials, that will be the stock we're talking about, or that will be desk?
Can you repeat, Madam Chair?
You're making a distinction between stock and between furniture. And you're saying that as far as the submission was concerned, apparently the focus may have been on furniture.
Right, which is minor equipment.
Minor equipment.
Right.
And in the submission, my recollection is that they referred to materials. And therefore, I was wondering whether the explanation of stock, because I would think stock cards weren't talking about furniture. Okay. And I may be wrong. So what I'm speaking about, the questioning comes from the submission regarding stock cards.
Okay, well, we do in fact have stock cards. The storekeepers do in fact have stock cards. They will record stocks. For persons to get stocks from the stores, they must submit requisitions. Then they would issue, then they would update the stock cards. We do stores audit to verify that these procedures are followed.
And for purposes of you doing the audit, would the stock cards reflect who received, or to whom it was disbursed, or to what project, or for what purpose on the stock cards? Because that will what is going to inform your audit.
Not in all circumstances.
Yeah, and in the circumstances that it's not, is it an omission, or is there a definite determination that this information would not be captured in certain circumstances for certain reasons?
I think how some of the stock cards are made up, it is not entered, but in order for us to verify the amount that were issued and the date, we would look at the copy, because they keep a copy of the requisition that was submitted in order to get the item.
And would the fact that it's not on the stock card, would that present any challenge for your work as an auditor?
Sometimes it does.
Would the recommendation have been made that the information should be captured on the stock cards?
Yes, we would make the recommendation that enough information be placed on it so that we can identify.
And have you seen any sort of implementation of the recommendation such as that?
50% of the times there are implementation.
Therefore, would there be some sort of inconsistency with a submission that said that where internal audit makes a recommendation, these recommendations are implemented?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Therefore, the conclusion is that in not all cases would be the recommendations be implemented.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to ask one other thing for the vehicles. I saw that there's a register for vehicles and then there's depreciation as something that is recorded in the register. Am I correct?
The vehicle register that we would have examined, we do not see, they keep a book. There is nothing as it relates to a register as it relates to the value of the vehicle and the depreciation in it. The register that, the book that we would check when we're doing vehicle control would have the vehicle number and all the particulars relating to the vehicle.
And does it deal with depreciation? Because that is what is there in the submission. And really, what I want to get to is who determines depreciation? How is that assessed?
There is a policy for the THA as it relates to the depreciation of the asset. Madam Director of Finance can speak to that, please.
Chair, we have a policy, the operation of the fixed asset register policy manual. But in our financial statement, we do not depreciate, and that is a problem. Although, yes, we have the inventory, but in some divisions, it does not always translate into a fixed asset register as required by the Auditor General, because the fixed asset register will have unique features. So it will have the cost of the asset, it will have the depreciation. And I think that is what is mentioned here, right? As opposed to the inventory register, that depreciation is really not required in an inventory register. But yes, we have problems. We are trying to treat with it, coming on with the asset management system to also incorporate the fixed asset register module in order so that we can depreciate our assets, including the vehicles.
In the absence of your web-based solution, what steps are being taken to treat with the deficiencies?
The information that is required has to be included in the financial statement. So we have records. There are records. It is just not in a fashion or as the Auditor General will request or prefer, I should say. But there are records because we have to reconcile the purchases with the information going into the financial statement, right? But the whole preparation of the fixed asset register as it relates to the cost, the depreciation, the net book value, we have some deficiencies in that area.
And therefore, you expect those deficiencies to be treated with by the commencement of fiscal 2017-2018?
It is a working process, Madam Chair. In fact, we have a forum of senior accounting officers within the Assembly that meet monthly, and we did a template, sent it out to all the divisions to capture the information to be included in the fixed asset register.
And I understand it's a work in progress, but every progress has an end. I'm trying to get some sort of time frame in which we can see that this has been remedied with or without the web-based solution. That's really where I'm trying to get at, some commitment in terms of time.
Madam Chair, I would want to make a commitment that by the end of this fiscal year, all of our registers and so on would be up to date. In fact, the plan is during the almost at summer, during the August holidays, when we take on a few university students during that period, our intention is to utilize them to assist us in bringing all our asset registers up to date, so that by September of this year, we should not have that recurring problem.
Member Duki. Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just, Chief Secretary, I was looking here at the policy for the Chief Administrator. I'm sorry, my apologies. I'm looking here at the policy for the acquisition of motor vehicles and then the disposal of obsolete units. And in light of the proposed proclamation of the procurement legislation, I note that your submission speaks to a comprehensive re-engineering program. I'm wondering if you can give us some further details as to what this will entail.
Okay, we have taken on board the proposed procurement legislation, and we have gone as far as to go to Executive Council and have them approve structures for the various divisions as far as procurement is concerned. So we have had that. We have actually done some advertising of the positions, and we have interviewed some persons. So I would say within the next month to 6 weeks, our procurement units should be up and running in accordance with the proposed new legislation. And in fact, only yesterday I attended a meeting with the Honorable Minister, Minister of Finance, basically appealing to, not appealing, but giving instructions to the various ministries, and I attended as Chief Administrator of the THA, to put their houses in order, because pretty soon that legislation should be proclaimed and so on. So we are readying ourselves for that.
Thank you. Just one more. I also wanted to get some further information regarding your three-quote system, Chief Administrator, which is used by the department for selecting suppliers. Can you tell us how it operates and whether it has been effective?
Okay. Generally, the three-quote system is like this. You need to procure some goods or services. You would determine what the goods and services. Let me stick with that. Let me say with a good. You want to purchase some materials, for example. You will list the materials. If they are, let's say, materials from a hardware, you list the materials. You would send that list to at least 3 to 5 bona fide hardwares in Tobago, for example, and have them submit quotes. Those quotes would be submitted in a sealed envelope to a particular officer at a particular time. Those envelopes will be opened, and usually the lowest quote is selected for supply of the material. That's in a general sense how the three-quote system works. We say a minimum of 3 quotes. The more the merrier, but usually you get between 3 and 5 quotes.
Based on your answer, are you satisfied then that the system is free of bias and is transparent?
If implemented properly, it is fairly safe to use in that it eliminates a lot of the bias and so on, that rather than if you go out and just purchase from one individual, for example. So we insist on having bona fide business outfits who usually at the beginning of every financial year we'd ask them to indicate their interest in being on a list of suppliers for the Tobago House of Assembly.
One further question. What would be the reasons for your preference in using this system as opposed to the tendering process as through the Central Tenders Board?
We use the Central Tenders Board for tenders beyond $1 million. That is likely to cost more than $1 million. Under $1 million, we use an in-house tendering process. But the three-quote system are usually for small amounts of items. If it's in the three-figure range, we normally go out for tender. The three-quote system does not prevent us from going out for tenders. The three-quote system is really for small items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I understand with the three-quote system, you're supposed to have a pre-qualified list from which you draw the three quotes. Do you have a pre-qualified list in the THA?
Again, the Tobago House of Assembly does not have a pre-qualifying list, but each division of the Tobago House of Assembly would have their varying lists.
I just wanted to get some more information on the preparation for the onset of the Procurement Act. You said that the Assembly has drafted its own list in terms of the configuration of the procurement entities. Does that differ from what is being done in Trinidad?
Yes, it differs slightly in the sense that we would have gone ahead of the cabinet in this regard. In that we went to Exec Council. Let me back up a bit. Our MSU, or Management Services Unit, they would have evaluated and determined what kind of structure is required to perform the procurement functions in the various divisions. And they would have recommended a certain staff architecture. We would have gone with that to the Executive Council and got approval for it. After we have gotten that approval, the cabinet decision came out. So we have looked at the cabinet decision and recognized that there was some little tweaking to be done. So we are in that process now. And coming out of the meeting yesterday, where the minister appealed to us to keep the units very, very lean and mean, given the need not to expand the public service, it's something that we are taking on board. In fact, only this morning I had some discussions on that. So we'll take a look at what was approved by the Executive Council to see if it meets those instructions, so to speak, and we will operate accordingly. But our intention is to have in place the procurement units that are adequately staffed to do the procurement in accordance with the new act, but at the same time, staffed in such a way that we will not burden the National Treasury in terms of additional persons to be paid and so on. Yeah. We recognize that.
I understand that, but that's the next question I was going to ask, because it was also emphasized that you should, in terms of the setting up of the unit, use as much as possible existing officers. But you mentioned earlier that you might be going out for recruiting. So how do you gel it to?
No, in fact, for our divisions, whether we want to call it procurement or not, we had persons doing procurement all the time. So with the new procurement legislation, we went internally. We identified those persons who are qualified and trained, and those persons who have the potential to be qualified and trained. In fact, I was rather surprised. When we did the internal advertisement for procurement officers and buyer shoppers and so on, we got a huge number of applicants. We had persons who are on contracts as BOA1s, who have MBAs, who applied. So we thought that we had a treasure trove of resources that we can use. And I mean, while the procurement professional might not want to agree with me, I mean, the procurement function in the public service is not really rocket science. Persons can be trained to do that. Mm-hmm. So we have engaged those persons who we feel have the necessary background, meaning first degree in management or accounts or economics or something like that. And those are the persons that we are targeting to move into our procurement units. So the functions that they now perform in the wider THA, quote-unquote, public service would have to be performed by somebody else if we select those persons.
Thank you. Madam Chair, just one final question. So let me just get you correctly. The advertisements that have gone out internally, not externally.
For the procurement units in the various divisions. But there's also, we have what is called a procurement, I think we call that
Chief Procurement Officer.
We have a procurement oversight unit with about 4 or 5 officers who the intention is to have those kind of supervise the entire procurement function in the Tobago House of Assembly. For those units, we went out nationally. And we had some very good applicants there also too.
Member Webster Roy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, just to clear up for me, please. So we're going to have a central procurement unit that will do oversight of the subunits in the different divisions?
Yes, that's the current thinking, and that was what was approved by the Executive Council.
Okay, is that in line with what was discussed at the meeting yesterday?
More or less in line with what was discussed. The only thing that was discussed yesterday that, well, I shouldn't say the only thing, but what I went away with yesterday was the need to really take a critical look at our numbers to see if we are not going beyond what is really absolutely necessary given the financial circumstances in the country right now.
Question, Madam Chair, one more question. Chief, taken into consideration as some of the divisions may be quite small in the THA, do you think it's feasible for small divisions to have individual procurement units, or for maybe small divisions to merge and share the function?
That is a discussion that we are having right now, given what transpired yesterday.
Member Mahavir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Again, on the same vein of maximizing resources, this time not of personal use, but rather the goods and services that you acquire. You did indicate in your submission that there are clear guidelines for the disposal of obsolete equipment, but obsolescence is a function of maintenance. And insofar as we are really experiencing stringent financial difficulties in Trinidad and Tobago, I'd like to know what measures are being put in place to ensure that the goods and services that you do procure via the Central Tenders Board, new procurement regulations, or the three-code system, that those goods and services, those goods really are going to be maintained so that you can extend the life of them. Because we've had submissions from other agencies indicating that they've had vehicles properly maintained 15 and 16 years old. Do you have a similar policy in the THA to extend the life of your durable assets?
Yes, we do, and I think perhaps some of the oldest vehicles in the public service are now with the Tobago House of Assembly.
What's the average age?
We have some vehicles that are, I'm guessing here, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. In fact, we are thinking that we need to change them because of the cost of our maintenance. In fact, the vehicle that the Chief Secretary, now the official vehicle for the Chief Secretary, is over I think, 5 years old. And we are giving serious consideration to changing that vehicle. It has started creating some maintenance challenges for us.
Okay. Mr. Sandy, in terms of, again, in your submission, you spoke about a comprehensive re-engineering program in terms of treating with procurement and disposal in the light of the procurement legislation. I haven't heard that terminology here today. And therefore, I wanted to find out what is this comprehensive re-engineering program, if what you've described is facets of it, if maybe you could just elucidate.
Yes, what I describe is facets of it. In fact, the UNDP, who are assisting the government of Trinidad and Tobago with the procurement legislation, they came to Tobago and they were pleasantly surprised at the progress that we had made with regard to the public procurement function. And they have actually used the Tobago House of Assembly, they had planned to use, I should say, and they indicated that they'll use other model and test case throughout their operations when they do procurement, because they do procurement not just in Trinidad and Tobago. They are consultants and they work all over the world. Because they had found that we had grabbed the ball and we had really run with it, and that we were way advanced of the national effort in terms of putting the procurement units in place. In fact, at a meeting of permanent secretaries, that permanent secretaries board meeting, when they tendered the job descriptions for procurement officers and so on, I thought that all was far superior. And I took our job descriptions and passed it on to the office of the Prime Minister. And I believe that was used skillfully by that office. So that's the re-engineering that we are talking about. The new unit, yes.
At the internal audit function as set out in the submissions. And therefore, I would like to know, to start with, in the written submissions, the accounting officer had said he was satisfied with the output of this unit. However, there was another statement saying that the unit was inadequately staffed. And I really was interested to see how these two statements are reconciled.
Yeah, we were satisfied with the work that the limited staff was doing. But we recognize that the staffing is inadequate. In fact, we have gone so far as to go to the Executive Council with in fact, they have approved it. They've approved the hiring on contract of some audit assistants for the various divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. We have advertised within the THA, given the need for us to rationalize some staff that we have. And we have received a number of applicants, and the HR department of the Office of the Chief Secretary is working towards filling those contracted positions based on the person who responded to the advertisement. So sooner rather than later, I would say within the next 2 months or so, the staffing at the audit unit should be improved quite a bit. The thinking is that, well, not the thinking, the plan is to have each division should have a small, either 1 or 2 persons, depending on the complexity of the division, to do their mundane, routine, daily audits. And the audit unit, of which Ms. Hackett is the head, will treat it more system audit and risk audits and so on. So the day-to-day checking of pay sheets and so on will be done by the internal audit units that are to be implanted in each division of 1 or 2 persons.
And how would you then, so I see you're getting the manpower. You had identified before an issue of training within audit. In fact, the statement says that periodical training to ensure compliance with updated international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing has not been made available to the staff thus far. So you'll be getting more staff. How are there any plans to treat with training of staff that you currently have and with the staff you're going to employ to ensure that they keep abreast with the international standards?
Yes, Madam Chair. The intention is to train the audit assistants that we are about to engage and those who are currently within the system to bring them up to a certain level so that they can perform the audit function, quote unquote, properly. The other senior officers like Ms. Hackett here, they have been benefiting from some training, some ad hoc training done by the Public Service Academy. And Ms. Hackett can speak to the kind of training that they're exposed to. And Ms. Hackett, I almost want to say pesters me, but I wouldn't use that word. It's not parliamentary here. But Ms. Hackett does request from me funding for opportunities for training. And Ms. Hackett can speak to that.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, Madam Chair. We would have, in my initiative, in order to bring staff to a higher level as it regards auditing, would have engaged the University of the West Indies, where we would have done a certificate in internal audit, as well as Mr. Sandy said, we would have put proposal to do a certificate in forensic accounting because of the fact when we do some systems audit in order to analyze some of the vouchers that we are seeing, that we are able to do that as well. With regards to the public administration, most of the training is done in Trinidad, and most times we are unable to go to the training because of the fact that they would require 1 or 2 persons. When we get the request and the deadline that they give, when we get it, sometimes we don't have any money to go to the training. So I try my best to source training so that the providers could come to Tobago so that majority of the staff would be able to be trained.
Ask when last training was done of the audit staff?
The last training we would have had was in 2013 when we did the certificate in internal audit with the University of the West Indies. That was a year program.
Coffee?
Actually, Madam Chair, I was going to ask the very same question. So if you have 10 people did the course in 2013 and no one has done it since, the other members of staff, has anyone, are the 10 people still there working in the accounts in the audit department?
Yes, sir.
Right. And so you have identified a need for training, and you have more people who need to do the certificate. What has prevented you are from 2013, now it's 2017. Why haven't more people embarked on the training?
In order for us to get the training in Tobago, we had to get the numbers, or we would not have brought it to Tobago. So we got the numbers. The other 2 officers who are there presently that did not do the training were doing their BS in management. So that is why only 10 of us did the training. There are 2 officers, because of illness, that they could not complete their last subject to get the certificate. We have been trying with UE for the longest while for them to do that one subject to finish, to get the certificate, and to no avail. So sometimes there are problems. In order to do the training, we have to get the numbers in order for the school to come to Tobago to do the training, because it would be very expensive for us to come to Trinidad.
How well would you say, given the constraints you have in terms of trained staff, how well would you say the department, the internal audit function is working?
Excellent. Based on the numbers that we have been working tirelessly because of the fact that right now we are understaffed because we are short of 7 officers. We have 12 auditors working at present, and we try our best to, because not only do we have to do pay sheets, audit of vouchers, we have to do pension and leave to send to the Comptroller of Accounts, all record of service, and then do all the systems audit in the 10 divisions of the THE.
Okay, you have given me your interpretation of your performance. How does the Auditor General think that audit is going in Tobago?
Well, based on the submission of the Auditor General, they would have stated that they think the audit is not doing enough. But I have records to show that the audit department, by reports that we submit to the Chief Ad, and what we kept as records to show that we have been doing audits. Also in the administrative report submitted to Parliament, we would show that we would do audit, but not we would do audits, but because of the limited amount of staff, we might be able to do an audit once a year. We might not be able to do it twice because of the fact that we have 10 divisions. If we have to do a bank reconciliation, we have to do 10 divisions, which would have 30 banking accounts. So that is 30 bank rec. Then we would do other audits to supplement, as well as do checking of the vouchers, doing record of service and pension and leave audit.
And Madam Chair, can I also add here that very often they are taken off course in the sense that any incidents of alleged fraudulent activity, I call on them to go in and do an audit immediately, and they have spent some time doing that kind of audit also. I must say, I'll say publicly here that the audit department, notwithstanding the limited staff, I think that they're doing a very good job for the Tobago House of Assembly.
Very much, and therefore might I invite Member Bashk.
In the absence of a separate body for the internal audit unit, how does the department determine if an investigation conducted by the internal audit unit is free from bias?
Can I get that question again? I'm not too sure I understand it.
Okay, in the absence of in the absence of a separate body, in your submission indicated that, in the absence of a separate body for internal audit, if an investigation is conducted, how do we know that the unit is free from bias?
A difficult one to answer, but I would basically say that I trust the auditors to be unbiased, and I have had no evidence so far to suggest otherwise. I have had auditors who have audited their own relatives and have come up with recommendations that you would not normally find. So I've trusted the auditors, and I rely on them heavily for information in that regard.
Okay, how does the accounting officer deal with the issue of differences in opinion on what constitutes the legal authority in the case of decisions of the Executive Council and those of some of the arms of the central government, and what has been done to rectify this situation?
That's a very interesting question. Sometimes we have an in-house legal team headed by a senior state counsel, and we rely on that unit for legal advice. Sometimes, if the issue is one of greater national importance, sometimes we go out for senior counsel advice. We have sought the advice of the Solicitor General in some matters, and we have received advice from the Solicitor General, let me put it that way. So we depend on various sources for legal advice, depending on the complexity of the situation and so on.
My other question deals with staffing issues. Has any attempts been made to contact the Service Commission?
Let me answer you by way of an example. A rationalization exercise was done of the Tobago House of Assembly in 2007. Based on that rationalization exercise, Cabinet approved a number of positions for the Tobago House of Assembly. We are now in 2017, 10 years later, and a number of those positions are before the Chief Personnel Officer for reclassification. A number of them are before the Service Commissions for appointment of officers to those positions, 10 years later. Does that answer your question?
Member Mahabir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A question to Ms. Hackett on internal auditing. In your submission, you indicated that the recommendations of the internal auditors are normally implemented. Could you provide actual examples where out of the work of the internal auditors, there were recommendations which were subsequently implemented by the various arms of the THA? Actual concrete examples.
For example, like if we're doing like bank reconciliation, examination of bank reconciliation, and then we would identify that they would do it wrong. They do follow the instructions and do it the way that we ask them to do it, because when we go back to do other audits, we see it. As well as when we're doing like vote book examinations, and we would make recommendations that, you know, you're not supposed to, like, there might be instances they would pass a voucher on that particular head that they're not supposed to. They would accede to it. In cases where we do audits, we might, if we find something at the particular time, we would identify the mistakes, and they would in fact do the changes immediately for us.
Member Duki.
Thank you, Madam Chair, again. Back to the issue of training, but not training directly. How do you know that your training interventions are working? In other words, how do you measure the impact it is having on job performance in terms of the audit function?
Generally, I would assess it by the way the reports that are submitted to me. In the internal audit, we have persons who, most of the officers meet the general requirements of the public service, which is you come into the public service with either the audit department with 5 O-levels, accounting or auditing. There is only one person who is a qualified accountant, which is myself. So based on my qualification and based on the type of reports, based on the audits that they do and the reports that I receive, I will be able to measure that from the reports submitted before, whether or not they have grasped what was taught or what they would have learned when I send them out on training.
That's good.
Okay, Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, I just want to take you back again to the Auditor General report for 2015 and follow up to a question by a previous member, where the Auditor General identified that vouchers to support 2 transfers totaling close to $400,000, just short of $400,000, and schedules of accounts recording another 2 transfers totaling just over $100,000 to the Tobago House of Assembly were not produced for audit scrutiny. Can you, Chief Administrator, perhaps through Ms. Hackett, indicate what would be the reasons for the failure to produce these documents?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Sure. It refers to the Auditor General report of 2015, where it states that there were 2 transfers, vouchers to support 2 transfers, which would have totaled close to $396,900,677 to be exact. And furthermore, schedules of accounts recording another 2 transfers, which would have totaled just over $100,000 to the THA, were not produced for audit scrutiny. This is the Auditor General saying this. Can you perhaps shed some light on that?
Yeah, I'm a little taken aback by the Auditor General's comments. If what you're saying is coming from the Auditor General for 2015. In fact, after this meeting today, we are scheduled to meet with the Auditor General to discuss the management letter for the year 2015. And the preliminary letter that we got from the Auditor General, those 2 findings are not included there at all. So I'm a little surprised because 2015 is now being audited. When I say now being audited, just being completed. And we are meeting with the Auditor General this afternoon after this meeting, myself and the Director of Finance, to treat with the management letter from the Auditor General.
Well, Chief Administrator, I'm very happy to hear that. So perhaps you can undertake, in the light of this, to maybe clarify that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, I just wanted to check whether you have established the small internal audit division units in each division, because in your submission, it said by March 2017, you would be establishing small units in each division.
No, they have not yet been established. The positions have been identified, the persons have been shortlisted, and my HR unit is treating that as we speak. I must admit that at the time when that report was submitted, I thought they would have been in place by now, but they have not been in place as yet.
But given the pool that you're working with, the Auditor 2 said she's the only trained accountant. You only had 10 persons doing the certificate course in 2013. Where are you going to get people to fill these small units in the various divisions?
Remember the requirement for it's really an entry-level position, and the requirement is really 5 O levels, perhaps with maths and accounting. And as I said earlier, I have received applications from persons with MBAs and first degrees in accounts and so on for those positions, those entry-level positions, and we are treating with that now. Because of the realignment of the portfolios in the THA, that is one of the reasons it kind of derailed us a little bit in the sense that we are treating with that rather than filling of those vacant positions. But I can assure you that we're going to put it on the front burner and get those persons in as soon as possible.
Mabaduki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to locate it here. As reference was made to a certain lack of expertise in the audit function that would have prevented certain examinations from being done. What type of expertise you referred to?
As it relates to the lack of expertise, because of the fact that we don't have much trained accountants in the audit, to do financial statements in a division, you must have the knowledge of accounting, because in a financial statement, because of the fact that there are international standards that you have to follow, you have to be able to identify what is an asset, whether or not the assets are being classified properly, whether or not they are treated properly in the financial statements. And because of the fact that I am the only qualified accountant, there might be persons who are doing ACCA and CIMA, but they are low-level staff. most of the time, because of the fact that I have to do administrative work, I don't have the support to be able to do those audits, because I also help in doing other audits that is required.
And in situations like that, how is that addressed? Is it just left undone, or how is it addressed?
Well, we have never, as the submission would have stated, we have never, since I have assumed duty, we have never audited the financial statement before it is submitted to the Auditor General's Department.
Member Mahabir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, again to Mr. Sandy, I need clarification, sir. With respect to your earlier statement, you indicated that the Auditor General is going to have a discussion with respect to management letter for 2015. But the transfers to which my colleague MP Bodo referred to were mentioned in the Auditor General's Department website, Auditor General's Report 2015, which were issued. So I suspect they referred to 2014 because it's the Auditor General report for 2015. But according to the information we have from the Auditor General's Department website, it said that there really were two vouchers totaling $396,000 and then $101,000. Yeah, this came from the Auditor General's report from the website, downloaded and forwarded to us. So I would really like to get your views on it, on whether in fact there is an error in the information we have, or whether that the Auditor General's report 2015 was really referring to what happened in 2014.
I know it could not be 2014 because the Auditor General did not audit 2014. They audited 2009 and then they jumped to 2015.
Okay.
Are you sure it's the Tobago House of Assembly or Central Administrative Services?
Tobago House of Assembly. It's Tobago House of Assembly. Anyway,
well, you certainly have information that
there is a question mark. We will. I would ask if your auditors can in fact reconcile the figures and in writing indicate
yes, we'll
whether there was
submit a response in writing
or not.
We will submit a response in writing, sir.
All right. Might I ask then, Mr. Sandy, in the submission, we were told that the Charter of Internal Work Plan for fiscal 2017 was not prepared. However, there was a work plan for November 2016 to March 2017 that was prepared and approved by you. Might I ask if to date, if an internal work plan for the fiscal 2017 has been done?
The practice since I'm in office is for the head auditor here to submit quarterly work plans for my approval.
Quarterly?
Work plans for my approval. That has been the practice.
So we now, the quarter March 2017 has been completed. What is the going forward?
Our plan for April to September has been submitted and has been approved.
Okay, so you really do it biannually?
Well, in this case, a 6-month program came and I approved it, yes.
Okay, all right. Also found very interesting, and let me see if I could find it in the submission, in terms of audits being done of what are considered high risk. Let me see if I could find exactly, yes. In terms of under efficiency of the internal audit checks on specific areas, what we were told is that internal audit ascertains what they deem to be high risk areas, and they formulate work plans to perform audits in those high risk areas. What factors are used to determine high risk areas?
The factors that are used to determine the high risk is relative to whether or not if a division do not complete a particular project, how it would affect the objectives of the division, in my view. as well as the amount of monies that are spent on a particular project. Also, we looked at areas where monies can easily be removed, as in the sense of like cash, dealing with cash-in transactions as well. So based on those kind of objectives, I will determine what audit should be done.
And therefore, it is basically a subjective process used by you?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, and the routine checks of activities that are undertaken, are these just of the high-risk areas, or these are the other areas that are not considered high-risk?
The routine check is both. We would do high-risk as well as we would try to do normal examinations in between.
In the submission, we were told that routine checks are done at least 3 times a year. That relates to what?
We would try to do cash surveys at least 3 times per year. We would try to do like stores, but in the cases like doing audits as it relates to certain divisions that have projects and stuff, we might be able to do it at least once. Bank reconciliation, we would try to do it once. In the case like no and then we would try to do the examination of the income and expenditure. We did it last year in 2014. In 2015, we would have done the JAS audit because of the fact that so much money was spent. We would have tried to do an audit as it relates to that because of the amount of monies that was spent.
Okay, and then maybe you can give us in writing a schedule of the audits you've done, say in the last fiscal year and this fiscal year,
okay.
And the number of times according to the high-risk areas and the other areas.
Okay,
but I understand your difficulties, your challenges having regard to the limited staff and the wide span of the THA because of your 10 divisions and so. Might I be correct in saying that a lot of the audit function is really concentrated on verifying things like pension and leave records, records of service, arrears of salaries, wages and contract gratuity?
Yes, ma'am. Most of the audit is concentrated on that. I try my best to, because of the limited amount of staff, I would at least try within every quarter, at least 6 members of staff, which include me, to do systems audit. And the other remaining staff will do the checking of the vouchers and the pension and leave and record of service. But when coming to the end of the financial year, which is September, we don't do any systems audit. All the staff is concentrated on doing the vouchers because of the fact it is coming to the end of the financial year.
Okay. And can I ask whether you will have a fraud policy in the THA? And it comes directly from Mr. Sandy saying that the internal audits sometimes taken off their regular schedule to have to look at issues that appear to be fraud. So that's why I want to ask if you have a fraud policy.
But I don't know if you have a fraud policy, but my policy with respect to fraud is wherever I hear of any kind of fraudulent activity, I want to find out about it and root it out and treat with the issue.
Okay.
So I will ask internal audit to go in and do an audit and really determine whether or not any kind of fraudulent activity is perhaps taking place, and then take it from there. If I have to inform the police or whatever it is from there.
Okay. So the identification of what might appear to be fraud usually originates with you and not with the internal audit?
Sometimes from the internal audit, yes, because Ms. Hackett here would bring, Ms. Hackett reports directly to me.
Okay.
And she bring to my attention certain information, and based on that, we'll take a certain kind of action.
All right. So can I ask, when last was there any issue where something that appeared to be fraud occurred?
Without going into too much specific, because it's a matter before
Don't want to
the
be specific,
court.
I just asked when.
Oh, yeah, as late as last November,
No, June, July.
licensing. Yeah.
June, July?
July, yeah. Right.
And therefore internal audit would have investigated that?
Yes, they would have.
All right. Would there have been any valuable suggestions coming, and I don't want to know what the issue was, any valuable suggestions coming from internal audit to you as the chief administrator based on their investigation? And if there were, what then sort of steps would have been taken by you as the chief administrator to ensure that there won't be a recurrence?
In every instance of any type of fraudulent activity, or even if it's not fraudulent, any deviations from what is supposed to be, the audit, Ms. Hackett would write to me indicating what the recommended solutions are. And I would then write to the administrator of that division insisting that the recommendations are implemented. And there's some follow-up after by the auditors to ensure that those recommendations are implemented. In 90% of the cases, they are implemented. In some cases, they are not for varying reasons. But we try our best to put things in place to prevent the fraudulent or irregular activity.
Okay, but I got a general answer. My answer was really specific to the last incident, which you identified in June, July last year, I believe.
Yes, I've had some recommendations, and yes, we have implemented them.
Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, I wanted to ask some questions on your monitoring and evaluation framework. And I notice here that you say that projects are constantly examined to determine progress. And I wanted to get an idea of a project that you have stopped because it wasn't going well. Because it says here that you do continuous study to determine whether they are viable.
We do continuous monitoring through the planning department. Unlike the ministries in Trinidad that have monitoring and evaluation units set up for that particular purpose, the only division in the THA that I know had a monitoring and evaluation unit, well, two divisions actually. I think Community Development had one, and Division of Infrastructure and Quarries, they had a monitoring and evaluation unit. Outside of that, the planning department monitors these projects to ensure that they are going at the pace and that the money spent on them are in accordance with what the project plans were. I can ask Mr. Andrews to speak to that in terms of any further disbursements are only made on the recommendation of the planning department, saying, well, okay, we have examined this project and therefore we can disburse additional funds to them. I can't recall any particular project, maybe Mr. Andrews might be able to assist me, that we would have stopped because it wasn't proceeding in accordance with plans.
Thank you. That's also correct. We would not have stopped any project, but in discussion with the various project officers who are responsible for developing these projects, and in discussion, therefore, around budget times, we usually have a general discussion with the chief with respect to which projects, based on perhaps any perceived overlap with other projects either within that division or with respect to a project that might have a similar set of objectives in another division, that we discuss with those divisions, okay, well, we do not put any funds in the next fiscal year for those, given those constraints in terms of time. It has worked in some cases where the divisions do comply with that because of the fairly large size of the DP portfolio, and that's another thing we try to do in terms of keeping things down so that we can get it more streamlined.
When you do surveys, because the report mentions that you do surveys and you use empirical data. Now I know from my experience sometimes you have a good project in mind, but the execution doesn't turn out to what you had in your mind. How often do you do these surveys? And if you find that something just isn't working, what was the process of streamlining it or getting it corrected?
Well, we would do the monthly status reports, and of course we would also have quarterly reports, but the divisions are also required to also submit their quarterly projections as well. And what we do, we combine the monthly status report, the quarterly projections, and what I would do is the utilization report. And we combine all three, and we look at the projections, like at this point in time, we will do a projection for September, and we will get a sense as to where things are going. And within there, we can make decisions, or we make recommendations as to, okay, if we intervene now, this is where we could have potential excess, and the extent to which monies could be diverted to projects that perhaps may have a greater need for funds based on the performance of the others.
Just to take up on the question in Mr. Andrews, I get the impression, I might be wrong, that the monitoring, first let me ask, my understanding is there's no monitoring and evaluation unit within the divisions except for 2 divisions. Yes?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
There are 2 that have specific units for monitoring and
Okay.
evaluation.
All right, and if I understand what Mr. Andrews had just described, it would appear to me that the monitoring that is going on is really just of a fiscal nature. You see, because you're talking about quarterly reports, you're talking about projections, okay? So it seems to me this is the monitoring of the project implementation.
Yes, it's the monitoring of the project implementation.
Okay, all right. But, and I think this might have been where Member Coffey was coming from. In your submissions, what we were told that the divisions also rely on empirical data collected through surveys and questionnaires, as well as feedback from communities to determine the impact of the programs. So we're not here now really talking about implementation, but I would get the impression from this, what you're really talking about, you want to see if the project has the reach that you intended, if it is serving the community, if it's fit for the purpose, for want of a better description, okay? And therefore, if you're doing surveys, do you do surveys and questionnaires for that?
The planning department would not do that, but there is one unit called the Community Liaison Unit, which would have community liaison officers, and they go out to communities and they discuss with the communities. They try to find out what are the issues facing communities, and they report directly to the Office of the Chief Secretary based on the issues that are raised by communities. And those issues then are then sent to the respective divisions where the actual jurisdiction and responsibility would lie. So even if it is a project, for instance, where maybe we have a problem with roads or with community centers being not on the list, the community liaison unit would actually have officers in the field going out and talking with the community, and they bring reports back to the Office of the Chief Secretary, and then that report is assessed and sent to the respective divisions for them to address.
All right, so if I understand well, Mr. Andrews, would this be done before a project is started, during the execution of a project, or after the project is completed?
It is done ongoing, and it's not specific to any one project. My understanding of how the community liaison unit functions is that they have community liaison officers in the communities who liaise with the residents and so on to ask about what are the felt needs, and they do their own observations with the unfelt needs, and they produce a report for the Office of the Chief Secretary.
So if I understand that well, this is unfilled needs. So these are like wants, your wish list.
Not really. The unfelt needs would be, sometimes communities may not necessarily know because they have been not had certain services for a long time, they would not necessarily ask them. But let me give you an example. If, for instance, you seem to have a problem with garbage collection, and you go to a community, and the community, they talk about roads, they might talk about employment. But if you ask them, well, they're accustomed to seeing the garbage. So being immersed in a situation is really an unfelt need. And so the community liaison unit would not just look at what is discussed, but they also make recommendations after they sort of flag certain issues, and then take those back to the office of the chief sec. And then that is then directed to the respective division to address.
So the monitoring and the evaluation is not really so much what a sort of feedback from the community, but it is also comes from the actual observations of your community liaison officers. All right, can I ask, what is the spread of your your community liaison officers vis-a-vis your districts or your villages or your communities?
There are community liaison officers throughout the island. Each of them have their own area of jurisdiction, so the entire island is covered as far as having a community liaison officer. And back to your original question, Madam Chair, I would want to submit that the two divisions with monitoring and evaluation units, if you permit me to send a written response to your question in terms of the monitoring and evaluation, the output, because that part of the answer actually came from those divisions that have monitoring and evaluation units. And my understanding, and I hope that I'm right, is that they go out and monitor those projects and determine whether or not the projects are in keeping with what the project is supposed to be, and if not, why not? And if it's necessary to terminate and so on, they can recommend that kind of action. That is how I understand it. And so I can submit a written response to that for you in terms of those divisions with monitoring and evaluation units, what their functions are and how they operate.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy. And I will welcome that. I'm just interested in as we are taking down the road with the community liaison officers, you said the island is completely serviced by how many community liaison officers there are? And do they work on some universal work program so that you know in the assembly that they would visit their communities according to a particular schedule, that their reports will come in accordance with a certain schedule, or is it up to the community liaison officers to determine when they go to the communities? Further, having done that, what sort of response there is to their recommendations?
Okay. The community liaison officers, they all report to a coordinator who coordinates the activities of all the community liaison officers. And that coordinator liaises with them on a weekly basis and determine their work program for the next week and so on. And reports are produced as to what they are engaged in, and their primary role is to go out to the communities and identify those little irritants that might slip by the various official divisions and so on. So they report on areas where roadworks are needed, for example, or where you have a water problem, or where you might have an electricity problem and so on. So they identify those little areas within the communities where some relief can be brought. That is brought to the attention of the coordinator, who then submits a report, and then that report is then farmed out to the various divisions with responsibility for those areas.
And what role does the chief administrator have in that?
Not much of a role. The coordinator of the liaison units usually takes responsibility for that.
And any reports done to you at all?
Yes, okay.
Annually or otherwise?
Yes, monthly reports are done to me.
All right, thank you. Member Bodo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, if I may direct your attention to goods and services, and in particular, the Office of the Chief Secretary. And if we look at your submission on pages 14 to 16 with regards to the hosting of conferences, seminars, and other functions, And there are several items listed there. There are three that I would want to just highlight. One would be the Chief Secretary's Awards, THA Awards, an allocation of $320,000. The Senior Citizens Christmas Luncheon, $240,000. Of course, quite laudable events, but the question I have would be, in view of the current economic situation, whether any consideration has been given to perhaps adjusting or reducing the cost of the seminars and conferences for fiscal 2017. And the second question would be, I have noted that in your submission, the statement that there's no formal assessments are conducted on conferences and seminars and so on, if that is in fact correct. And if that is the case, how do you process the information from these events going forward?
To your first question, member, yes, we are taking into consideration the financial situation in the country now and the resources that are not available to us anymore. And certainly those two functions, the Chief Secretary's awards function and the Senior Citizens Christmas Luncheon, will be tailored to meet the new realities of the Tobago House of Assembly.
And thank you for that response, Chief Administrator. I also note the Shore Park complex, and the item here speaks to the hosting of a forum with promoters, and the sum of $800,000 is allocated. And the objective is to encourage use of the facility through marketing efforts. Can you indicate whether that sum is still being utilized, and how you'd go about hosting this forum?
Can I promise to give you a report on that? But I'm not okra with all the facts of that.
Sure. That will suffice. Thank you.
All right. I wanted Chief Administrator to just get some further clarification on a statement you had made earlier with respect to the students that you intend to hire in August to assist with improvements in your deficiencies in inventory control. Now, if I recall well, in your submission, your allocations for short-term employment has decreased by 62% in fiscal year 2017. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And my understanding is also that this vote, this allocation is generally used for the hiring of people on short-term contract, usually the student program during the August vacation.
Yes, ma'am.
And historically, a lot of that is used with, for students to bring up to date your pension and leave records and so on. How, with a decreased allocation, are you going to meet both the needs of what historically you would use the students for, pension and leave, and I think engineering was another area that you highlighted. How are you going to meet that with also the need, as you have identified, for improving your deficiencies in inventory control?
Yes, ma'am. The students that we take on for them, and it's not in August, we take on university students for 3 months, June, July, and August. And,
well, if you forgive me, I always say August, meaning August holidays.
Oh, okay.
As in contrast to those who say summer holidays.
Okay, right. Well, number one, this year we'll take on far fewer students than we did last year and the year before. So we're starting off on that with less students. So this year the concentration is going to be on assisting us with getting the inventories up to date. While in the past we have used some of the students in the past for the same purpose. I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, I used the entire complement at what was then the Division of Infrastructure and Public Utilities to bring our records up to date in terms of the records that the Auditor General keep complaining about. We can produce certain documents and so on. I had them go through all the documents, basically put them in packages and so on and so on. So we are going to use the students again this year to assist with that particular purpose in terms of getting the equipment not just tagged but identified, serial numbers and so on, and place them on that inventory listing or that record. The students that normally assist us with the pension and leave during this holidays, they might be much less than we did in the past. So we'd have to do a judicial balance of the needs of the assembly, the amount of fund that we have to spend, the reduced amount of fund that we have to spend. I think last year, if I remember well, we would have engaged maybe about 150 such students. This year, the numbers are going to be much less.
Okay. In terms of the rate of pay that you give to the students, would that also change having regard to the fact that we reduce allocation, or is that fixed and used every year?
It's fixed based on a decision coming out of central government, where all the students are paid at the same rate.
Member Webster Roy?
Chief Ad, how are the students selected for this program?
We have an advertisement on the website right now. I think the deadline for application was I think it was might have been yesterday, I think. So we then determine how many persons apply, and we do a more or less a random selection of those persons. I mean, last year, basically we did eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm serious.
Chief Ad?
No, I'm saying all the students who applied, we determined their need, and the ones who were needy students were far exceeded the number of students that we wanted to take on, and we basically did a random selection.
Oh, so this is needs based or expertise based? Sorry.
No, it's not expertise based. It's needs based.
But your submission
they do rudimentary kind of work. It's not anything too specific to their studies and so on.
Oh, because your submission almost gave that impression, in that you said that the accounting officer ensures that the individual employed has the required skill set to meet the demands identified for the job. And when you're talking about submit and provide expertise in specific areas where the skill or expertise is not readily available among the current staff, example, civil engineering, communication, it didn't give the impression that these were low-level.
Madam, are you sure that we are talking about the university students there?
Well, we're talking about sub-item 22, short-term employment.
That's different, ma'am. Short-term employment is different from the university students.
Okay, so that then we have it wrong that this vote...
They might be paid under the same vote.
So the vote is used to employ...
To engage short-term? Yeah, short-term.
And also people under the university program?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Webster.
So, Chief, Mr. Sandy, I still want to go back to the fairness of the process. It can't be any minimum if you're not picking based on the needs of the department or this area of expertise for the students. So if I applied first, and for example, community development, enterprise development, and labor may need somebody, and you go in the minimum, I apply the first once, and how would you decide me over member Coffee or anybody else?
No, it's not a first come. We don't use a first come, first serve basis. We basically lump all the applicants together at the end. If the deadline was yesterday, by tomorrow somebody would be tallying all those persons who would have applied to ensure that they're eligible, because we only take students who are actually in university, not those who are completing university now.
Okay.
And the A-level students must be in lower 6 going on to upper 6, not the ones who are in upper 6 and leaving school now. Okay. So once you meet that basic criteria, we basically lump your name together, and if we decide that we want 50 university students and we have 250, we basically say take every 6th student. It's as rudimentary as that.
Okay.
Member Bodo.
Random selection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, just to follow up on Member Webster Roy's question, and to get an idea of the numbers that are involved, could you tell us how many applicants you normally get and how many you are able to facilitate? And the ones who are not facilitated, whether there are other opportunities available perhaps in the private sector in Tobago where these students might be accommodated?
I don't want to hazard a guess here, so I'll give you the specific figures for like the last 2 or 3 years. I'll give you a report on that, the specific figures of how many persons applied and how many were actually engaged. And as far as the engagement in the private sector, I don't have the information on that, but I do know that some of the private sector firms in Tobago do employ some of the university students during the quote-unquote August holidays.
Does the THA actually formally facilitate that process, so encourage it to has a mechanism in place to allow that? Or is it just that they apply on their own?
They apply on their own.
And are these paid minimum wages, these students?
I think it's about 4,500 a month. I can't recall the figures, but it's about somewhere around $5,000 a month or $4,500, somewhere around there. I can give you the specific figures, but I don't have it at hand here with me now.
Member Coffey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I move on to goods and services, or haven't we reached there yet? Okay. I wanted to ask about the 96 vacancies in the Office of the Chief Secretary. Now, given that it's a small department, that it seems like a high number. Now, I know sometimes a vacancy does not mean that you lacking staff. It could be the positions are no longer relevant, or you're not trying to fill them. Could you tell me some more information about those vacancies, whether it's really 96 vacancies that you have in terms of the establishment?
It has to be 96 vacancies. And as you said, sometimes the vacancies are on paper, so to speak, and not necessarily vacancies that we are required to fill at this time. For example, we would have decided to establish a particular unit, and the approval was for 40 employees. And at this stage, we only require 12, so we only hire 12, so it will appear as though there are 28 vacant positions there. But a number of the vacancies, I can't say exactly how many, a number of the vacancies would have been in the TEMA department, in the emergency management area, where a number of the trained CERT technicians would have left for greener pastures and so on. So we have a number of vacancies there. And we are in the process of retraining a number of officers for that unit. I know we had some vacancies in the USH department also, at the time when USH was under the Office of the Chief Secretary, and so there are a number of vacancies in the various units. But I suspect the majority of these would have been vacant positions that we are not intent on filling right now.
Okay, and Mr. Sandy, I have also observed that you had indicated in the submission that under short-term employment, there were, I think, 2 persons who've been re-engaged at least 3 times because their expertise was required to assist with the compilation of pension and leave records. I want to know if, as we speak, those 2 persons are still employed under short-term employment.
These 2 persons were retired public officers who had the expertise in pension and leave. And we took them on short term because we wanted to treat with the backlog of pension and leave. And they would have completed 1 6 months, then we took them on for another 6 months and so on. At least one of them is still working with us on a short-term basis.
One remains. Has there been any training by them of current staff to ensure that there's some sort of improvement in the capacity?
Yes, one of them was specifically taken on to train junior officers. But we have the problem in the public service where officers move around so often. And that is part of the problem in the general public service with pension and leave officers. Until it is made a specific stream in the public service, you'll continue to have persons moving from there into HR, into other areas after the training. And we'll continue to have a deficit of pension and leave professionals in the public service. And it's really affecting us in Tobago.
One more question under this short-term contract short-term employment. A response that I found really interesting, and I just wanted to engage you on it. This is, you had stated that the accounting officer ensures that the individual employed has the required skill set to meet the demands identified for the job to be done, and the periodic review confirms or indicates otherwise that the individual provides value for money expended on the employee. How does one assess that the individual employed provides value for the money expended in their employment?
By doing the quarterly performance appraisal. Once you're employed, your supervisor is supposed to do an appraisal of you on a quarterly basis and determine whether or not you are fulfilling the objectives of the position in which you're employed.
So when the people are employed on these short-term employment contracts, they're given targets per quarter. I'm really trying to find out what is this assessment based on?
Not necessarily targets per quarter, but you're employed you're assessed in terms of how you're performing the job that you're employed to perform. The job might not be target-based. It might not be how many persons you serve or anything like that. It might be your contribution to the larger effort of the unit.
And how is that assessed? I'm just trying to get an idea of how is this assessment done. I guess from your answer, you're saying it's more qualitative than quantitative.
Yes, it's more subjective type of assessment.
Yes.
Where a supervisor would say, okay, this person has worked well, they're willing, they complete the task given to them in a timely manner, those kinds of things.
And is this assessment, is this assessment discussed with the employee?
Well, certainly it is. At least that's the official way of getting it done.
And yeah, but I'm more interested in if it's in fact done and not the official theoretical way.
Yes. Not in all cases, because I've had complaints from officers who have complained to me that the appraisal was done and they were not consulted and they didn't even know the appraisal was being done.
All right.
So I must admit that.
And would that therefore not prejudice or affect an employee's assessment, your judgment of whether they providing value for money, their ability to be reconsidered for another contract?
Certainly. In fact, the procedure in place is that the employee must sign off on the assessment, saying, I've read this and it's a fair assessment of my conduct here. Some employees have said, I've read this and I do not agree with the assessment of my supervisor. And sometimes you have that kind of challenge.
Yeah, but that will ensure that it is fair.
Yes,
you're saying that there are instances that it hasn't occurred. And in instances where it hasn't occurred, of course, it should affect the fairness of the process.
Oh, certainly.
Therefore, how is that treated by you? Because, of course, if it is not a fair process, it means that the subjectivity could have other implications. How is that addressed?
Okay, I will normally call in the supervisor, the person who conducted the assessment, to find out what method did they use to assess the person without the person knowing that they were being assessed, and ask them to reconsider the assessment, or I'll ask a third party, somebody who worked closely with the person, to also give another assessment of the person, and I'll treat it in that kind of light.
How recently has that occurred?
The last one I had to deal with would have been sometime in last quarter, maybe around August, September last year.
Yes.
But it's not very frequent that it happens.
All right, okay. Member Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Administrator, I'm interested by the short-term and the vacation employment, given the fact that certainly in Trinidad there has been a significant reduction in both the ability to hire short-term and vacation employment. Going forward, for example, for 2017, do you see yourself being able to engage in both programs? And how has the financial situation affected your ability to engage in short-term and vacation employment?
It has certainly affected us in a negative kind of sense. just like nationally, we don't have the resources that we used to have. So we'd have to reconsider whether or not we can even afford to employ persons on short term. Even persons who are currently on contracts, there are no guarantees anymore that your contract would be, you'll be offered another contract. We have to take everything into consideration. Even though the stated policy of the Tobago House of Assembly is to try to keep employment levels as stable as possible. But that, of course, that comes at a cost, and we'll have to consider that in terms of the resources available to us.
Okay, and Chief Administrator, just to go back a bit, on the contract employment, we've seen that your allocation has increased by 35%, and what we were told is as a direct result of increases of employment, and also for payment of contract gratuity and arrears of contract gratuity. As far as the arrears for contract gratuity, what period is that?
It varies, Madam Chairman. We have persons who have not received contract gratuity for contracts that were completed 8 years ago, 6 years ago. It varies. Mm-hmm. So we are now trying to tidy up that whole arrangement to allow persons to receive their contract gratuities on a timely basis.
Okay, and from the allocation this year, how much of that sum is going to contract gratuity arrears, one, and secondly, would it totally wipe out the arrears?
I'll have to submit that in writing, madam. I have to get the figures for you on that.
All right, thank you very much. Member Duque? Member Webster Roy? Okay, so maybe then we can go on to mine equipment. Are there any questions that members would like to pose on the minor equipment? Member Bash.
In your submission, you've indicated that the division anticipates the following changes, which is, the first one is the expansion of several schools, which would require additional furniture and furnishings, and the second one being the upgrade and or replacement of non-functional furniture and furnishing. My question to you is, which schools are the recipients for additional furniture and furnishings for fiscal year 2017? This is under minor equipment purchases for the Division of Education, Youth Affairs and Sports.
This should be under Chief Administrator, Subhead 03, Division 06, 002, Primary, Secondary and Vocational Schools, Subitem 03.
Can I get the question again, please?
The question is, you've indicated in your submission that the division anticipates the following changes for fiscal year 2017. The first one being the expansion of several schools, which would present the need for additional furniture and furnishings. And the second one being the upgrade and replacement of any non-functional furniture and furnishings. My question to you is, which schools are the recipients for additional furniture and furnishings for fiscal year 2017? Okay.
So I'm going to submit that to you in writing.
Okay. My second question to you really deals with what are the mechanisms in place to oversee the disposal of non-functional furniture and furnishings?
Can I ask my colleague here to answer the question?
Could you please repeat the question?
Okay. What mechanisms you have in place to oversee the disposal of non-functional furniture and furnishings?
Okay, thanks. The system that is in place for unserviceable item, there is a committee for under the Finance and Economic Division. This committee consists of an auditor and a public service member, along with the chairman, which is myself. Divisions submit applications for non-serviceable articles for viewing. Members of the Board of Survey then go out and view these items. If they are in damaged, unusable, if they could use, if they could sell, if they could donate, and so on. So we make recommendations, leaving the decision, the final decision, for the administrator to decide or approve. So there is a Board of Survey committee to look at these items you should speak about.
Thank you. You've also indicated that there are no internal audit reports produced to ensure that there is evidence of transparency and accountability. Can you explain the reasons for the reports not being completed?
Can you go over that again, please? I'm not too sure.
Okay, in your submission, you've indicated that there are no internal audit reports produced to ensure there is evidence of accountability and transparency. All right, that's under the same subhead, 3, minor equipment purchase.
Oh, okay. Oh, in that part.
In that particular, right? So I'm asking to explain the reasons for the reports not being completed. And how would the division then determine transparency and accountability?
The question was whether or not we have internal audit reports produced. And we are saying that no internal audit reports are produced. As the member of staff indicated, an auditor is on the Board of Survey committee that looks at these. So in that context, the auditor is there in his or her capacity to ensure that the rules are followed and so on. And what that committee does is basically look at the item, determine whether or not it can be used, whether it has gone past its useful life, and what can be done, whether it should be dumped, whether it should be auctioned, whether it can be donated, and so on. And that recommendation goes to the administrator, who decides on the future of that particular piece of equipment or item. So the auditor is there in his or her capacity to ensure that the rules are followed and to ensure that there's transparency and so on in the whole process.
Okay. I just have one more question under that subhead. How does the division ensure selection of suppliers is free from bias?
As we said earlier, usually there is at the beginning of the financial year, you get a list, you advertise and get a listing of potential suppliers. So you have an approved listing. The procurement units that are in place now, even though they might not be called procurement units, they usually go out and establish the bona fide of these business interests. In fact, I remember when I used to be an administrator at Infrastructure and Public Utilities, I would have sent my accountant and an administrative officer to Trinidad to verify the bona fide of some business interests who wanted to supply us with some equipment and so on, only to find out that they were literally the address we got was an empty lot here, or a playground here, and so on. So we go out there and we establish a bona fide. And then once they're on the list and we require that particular good or service, then we go down the list and select those for sending the request for bids on. So in that way, we kind of ensure that that we are dealing with bona fide businesses, and that the process is fair in the sense that each entity is given the same information. They give them a date in which to submit it. The envelopes are opened at the same time with witnesses and so on, so that we ensure that nobody gets any advanced information and all of that. There's a process in place for it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Sandy, I just wanted to follow up on a question that Member Bash had asked in terms of the division determining transparency and accountability with respect to the disposal. And you said there is an auditor on the Board of Survey that will ensure the rules. In the submission, there was reference to reliance on a robust accounting system in place where there is a separation of duties from the procurement stage right through to the payment stage. And I really would like to get some understanding on what this robust accounting system is and how that impacts on the transparency and accountability of this vision.
But this is not related to the disposal.
This is related to the fact that there are no internal audit reports. And when you were asked the question about there being no internal audit reports, what you indicated that the auditor sits on the Board of Surveys and therefore ensures that the rules are followed. So that is just one aspect of it, but the initial issue was with respect to there being no internal audit reports produced to ensure evidence of transparency and accountability in the supply of furniture and furnishings, the upgrade and or replace of any non-functional furniture and furnishings. So my question is, yes, as far as disposal, what you're saying, don't mind we don't have audit reports, internal audit reports, and auditor is there. I'm saying on the other side, with respect to your answer, you're saying, look, we don't have internal audit reports, but we have a robust accounting system. And I'm trying to find out what that is. That's under the same item with primary schools, secondary and vocational, sub-item 03, furniture and furnishing.
Madam Chair, if I could attempt to provide some clarity. More or less, we're speaking to the standard financial regulations. There is a separation between the duties of those at the accounting units and those that do the procurement as we are now. And from the unit that create the committee that treats with the disposal. So there is clear separation between the function of acquiring, payment, and disposal. So when we talk about that robust system, more or less we try to follow that accounting procedure. However, I must also add that the Board of Survey Committee, there is a standard form in the public service that is used to report on the findings of the committee, and that is what is submitted to the administrator for consideration.
But isn't it really the internal audit function and reports that would really satisfy you of the fact that there is compliance, that there's transparency, that there's accountability? Because virtually you're saying, because you have this robust accounting system, and because you comply with it, yes, you have passed. But isn't it the function of internal audit to really ensure that there is compliance with whatever the financial regulations, to point out where there's not?
Certainly, ma'am. And from time to time, as the auditor would have indicated, depending on the area of audits they're doing, if that is one of the areas that they're looking at, any particular, in terms of the assets, and there is any variation, then certainly the auditor will present a report to the chief administrator, which would be identified to administrators accordingly for correction.
Right, so as far as this particular, because we're talking about a specific area, which is subhead 03, 06, 002, sub-item 03.
Yes.
Okay, so that really there isn't any internal audit report at all on this, and you just rely on the fact that, look, we say we follow standard regulations, financial regulations.
No, I think when we said no internal report, it's not totally that these particular areas are not reported on. In terms of the context that we saw here, we looked at the disposal area where you were talking about. The auditors will not audit the committee per se. As we said, there's an auditor on the committee. However, in looking at our furniture and furnishings, if the auditor is in a particular division and is looking at items that are stored and items that are registered with a particular division, if there are any irregularities, the internal auditor will certainly submit a report on the particular area of deficiency. Did that answer your question?
Well, it's a general answer, and therefore what I would like is that if maybe we could get in writing a specific response as relates to this particular subhead and when last any internal audit report was done.
Madam Chair, can I just, I think the way the question was asked, I think we interpreted it in the wrong way, or differently from how you're interpreting it. Yes. The question was, are internal audit reports produced? And we said, no internal reports are produced. It doesn't mean that internal audit does not do a check. Right. Because you asked if they were produced, and we said no, because if we had said yes, we couldn't produce one here. So it's in that context.
Okay, I'm sorry, and therefore, in the context of if there are internal audits, and when last, okay, even in the absence of the report. Okay, and therefore, if there are internal audits and no report, then what is the benefit of the internal audit? Okay, Member Coffey.
Madam Chair, I wanted to go to page 22 and the hosting of the forum for the Shore Park complex. Could I get an idea of what is envisioned for that?
Is that the same item I promised to do a report on, Madam Chair?
I think so. I think that was asked by
I can still answer the question, though. Basically, Shore Park complex is a new entity in the market. We are selling it as a premier concert facility in the Southern Caribbean. In fact, only 3 weeks or a month ago, we had the very first literally sell-out concert at Shore Park. That is the Sinatra Gospel concert. In its presence, 7. We are selling it as that. So this line item was about marketing Shore Park to bring more concerts and that kind of thing to Tobago. Because, of course, you'd appreciate that when a concert of that nature comes to Tobago, the hoteliers benefit, literally the whole economy of Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago benefits.
What I was trying to get was whether there was a planned event or it's just a ballpark figure.
I think it was a ballpark figure. We would, for example, have sent the coordinator of Shore Park I know he visited Las Vegas sometime earlier this year on a convention dealing with concerts and so on to try to sell Shore Park. So that is one activity that I knew that took place.
Okay. I would like us to go on to current transfers and subsidies. Members of the committee, I think we have to be mindful that the Tobago House of Assembly has to return this evening, and they leave on a 6:30 sailing. So we want to be sensitive. It's what? 6:30 flight. But I just hoping things will get better.
Madam, for your
So it's the airport you have to go to? I guess it's because I was so enjoying your company, I thought it had to be a sailing. All right, and therefore we have to be sensitive to that and to the traffic. I will therefore just maybe allow 2 more questions, and regrettably, let's try to bring this to an end at 5:15. What I would like to say to Mr. Sandy, we would follow up our other questions in writing. The Secretariat will do that and give you time by which to respond for the conversation to continue. So I wanted to ask Member Mahabir if he would ask some questions, and we'll end with Member Webster Roy.
Thank you very much. There are really 2 questions, but I'm permitted 1. And the question I want to pose is in relation to your rolling 3-year tourism plan and the subventions which are given to the airlines to assist in the marketing of Tobago. Could you give some information some additional information as to the airlines by name which receive this type of subvention, and what is the amount of funds, the sum of money we're talking about?
Member, could we provide that in writing, please? That response, we would have to seek the administrator for tourism and culture, and certainly they would be able to give us the specifics.
Member Webster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm moving over to Consolidated Fund. Okay, under subhead 09, Other Economic Services, there's a variance of 4.1 million, where the 2017 estimate moved from $900,000 to $5 million. In your submission, you noted that the increase in allocation will treat with the expansion of the business incubator program, infrastructural works at the micro enterprise centers, and a plan to establish and launch the program at the Cove Eco-Industrial Business Park. My first question is, how will the business incubator program be expanded? Question 2, how many businesses benefited from the program for the fiscal period to date? And I have another question I'll ask you after you answer me the first 2.
Subhead 9. Subhead 9.
Subhead 9. From there?
Yeah.
Okay, I would read the research information that was provided for us. The micro enterprise centers were in themselves to serve as a type of business incubator for small entrepreneurs. It was envisaged that they would successfully migrate from small-scale operations to large-level operations, since it's anticipated that they would be engaged in some level of capacity building. With the downturn of the economy, however, their progress have been somewhat stymied. Update on the centers. You had asked about signaling. You had asked. Could you repeat the other part of the question?
How many businesses benefited for the fiscal period to date from the program?
From the program? Those activities would have been curtailed due to the funding situation. But certainly for specific information, I would provide it in writing.
Okay. Other question? Thanks. You noted that there were going to be some infrastructural works at the centers. I wanted to know if the works commenced.
At the micro centers? Yeah. Yes, they have.
They have commenced. Okay.
They have commenced.
And what percentage of work completed and the cost?
The cost I would not be able to provide,
give it in writing.
but they're about 90% completed.
Would you be able to give the cost in writing?
I would be able to do that, certainly.
Okay. One more question, and then I will wrap up. We have time? Okay, good, thanks. How do you identify locations for centers? What's the process to decide which community would get a micro?
The micro centers?
Yeah.
And there may have been a process for that decision. I came into the Division of Finance in 2015, and they were already well in progress. So in terms of the background information, that may be on file in terms of how they would have decided on that. But certainly we have set up those micro centers at Signal Hill, Plymouth, Argyle, and Codler Hall.
Okay, so Madam Administrator, you've now put yourself in a spot. So you noted Argyle. Mm-hmm. And I'm from Roxborough, bordering Argyle.
Yes.
Argyle is not operating.
Well,
no, there was to have Argyle up and running, and what's the plan to ensure that all the micro centers are fully utilized and businesses are attracted to these facilities?
With regard to Argyle, they open it last week. With regard to Argyle, there were some funding issues that would have slowed the process of that project. But I'm sure in passing you would have recognized that a lot of work would have been done, and maybe that would have been opened few weeks ago or maybe soon, because those centers have now been reassigned to the Division of Community Development, Enterprise Development, and Labor. So they're no longer under the Division of Finance and the Economy. And this is why within this last quarter, all the works have been transferred there, and therefore the particular secretary and division will certainly have those up and running.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take it as an assurance that all the micro centers are up and running.
No.
And not all.
The one in Plymouth is still being completed as we speak. I know the one in Signal Hill, Calder Hall, completed and up and running. And I think the one at Argyle either opened last week or will be open soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the one at Plymouth, there still are some minor works to be done there.
Yes.
And therefore, Mr. Chief Administrator, could you just, in writing, confirm to us?
Yeah.
Please.
With respect to Argyle? Okay. Member Bodo?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The process of selecting location.
Chief Administrator, I have two questions with regards to the development program. One with regards to the agricultural access roads, and the other with regards to the enterprise assistance grant program. And I ask these because, of course, those are the areas of diversification that we're looking at. The first question is, in view of the 25 million allocation for agricultural access roads, and I know that this has been decreased from 47 million, can you indicate how many agricultural access roads have been built so far?
Our status report shows that there were 25, there was work done to upgrade 25 agricultural access roads throughout various parts of the island.
In terms of
and the report could be provided with the listing of those roads.
And that would be much appreciated. But in terms of your target for the financial year, that number would represent what percentage?
I would also provide that information. I don't have the information at hand.
Thank you. The second question pertains to the Enterprise Assistance Grant Program. And the question would be, how many persons were given grants under this program? And how much has been dispersed from the allocation so far?
In terms of total grant, you have $821,232.63.
Can you say how many?
That's 2016.
Sorry, and can you say how many persons or enterprises, organizations would have benefited from this expenditure?
If you hold for a few minutes, seconds will count. Yeah. Approximately 48.
Thank you.
Member Mahabir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for permitting me a second question. And this, again, is in the area of transfers and subsidies. In your submission, you indicated that there is a fish processing company proposed. FIPCOT has been mandated by the Executive Council to establish a modern fish processing plant. It did not say to establish a profitable fish processing plant. It says a modern plant. I really need further particulars with respect to, is this going to have private sector participation? Given the history we have had in Trinidad with a similar plant, is it that you have had a feasibility study? Have you had any kind of expression of interest from foreign partners? Further details on this project, what is the estimated cost, and what is perhaps the annual profit realized that you expect over the life of the project?
Remember, the questions are quite detailed, and we will certainly take the precise question and provide the answer in writing. I know the Division of Finance and Economy, we have a unit looking at the public-private partnership initiative, and certainly areas that can benefit from this process would be considered by the Secretary.
You advise the committee whether there was a feasibility study done, a cost-benefit analysis done, so that we could project the profitability of this enterprise?
I cannot give you that information offhand, sir.
Member Duque.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Dealing with the 3-year ruling plan for tourism, how do you measure the impact that transfers to airlines are having on visitor arrival? How do you measure that relationship, bearing in mind that there are other independent variables that would impact visitor arrival? How do you know that the transfer to the airline are actually positively impacting visitor arrival?
Okay. Again, the Administrator for Tourism, Culture and Transport may be able to give specifics, but I know there is a research unit based at that division who conducts surveys on occasions, on arrival of the flights, have discussions with the property owners, with taxi operators and various tour operators to determine the impact of these airlines. And I'm sure they would have
So surveys are
detail
done.
on
You get the information from surveys?
Yes, from the surveys.
I just want to know again, in the same vein, how do you measure visitor spend?
There is also that exit survey done by the researchers at the division who will determine, and most of it is done by the survey questionnaires, is either on arrival, or to determine the funding, or determine how much spent on their departure, or have discussions with some of the business operators.
Member Mabia.
Follow-up, yeah. A follow-up to the question again on the subventions given to the airlines. Can any member advise the committee whether any other Caribbean country, CARICOM country, provides a similar type of subvention so that their own tourism product may be enhanced?
I could say St. Lucia and Barbados, and also Antigua. I know that in my tenure at that division, there would have even been discussions with these islands to partner with them so that you have the drops taking place along the way, so that it reduces the impact of the cost on Tobago.
And could you advise, because that's very, very interesting. What's the status of those discussions with respect to the partnership? to minimize the cost and maybe minimize the budgetary impact on the THA of this expense?
I think some have not gone to the full extent. I think there was one arrangement that even created some challenges for us in terms of the island's commitment, but I do not have the specifics on that.
And just in that light, can I ask specifically which international airlines receive funding under this sub-item?
Okay. Of my previous knowledge, I know British Airways, but certainly we would provide that in writing if you want specific information.
And in the submission, we were told that the internal audit conducts audits on the books of the division and will give recommendations on ways to improve performance as the needs arises. Is this considered a risk? I think it's a risk, is the terminology you had used. A high-risk division?
Could you ask the question again, please, ma'am?
In your submission, you said internal audit conducts audits on the books of the division and would give recommendations on ways to improve performance as the needs arises. Earlier, internal audit had told us about determining high-risk areas. I want to know if this is considered a high-risk area.
I think it would, and I am talking here for the, the auditor, because I know, again, I am only talking to you, Madam Chair, from my previous experience at the Division of Tourism and Transportation, that we would have had audits conducted and recommendations made for some of the improvements that we should do.
So let me ask, when last an audit was conducted, what were the recommendations and steps which would have been taken pursuant to the recommendations? And that I would take in writing.
Right, and you're talking specifically with regard to the airline?
The airline, and therefore the internal auditor is here, so I think she's best placed to say to the committee whether something like this is considered high risk.
With regards to the year rolling plan, 3-year rolling plan, I cannot recall doing a specific audit with regards to the airline. When we were doing the Jazz audit in 2014, they would have done some marketing under this sub-item, and then we would have gathered the data, the monies that were spent. I can also recall when doing the Jazz audit, in speaking to some of the workers at the division as it relates to some of the airline. I think there is an airline with Brazil, and some coordination that they have, I would have also stated to them they were receiving reports from these airlines, and I would have told them that we need to get them in our language so that as to ascertain whether or not they would have complied to what we would have paid for, because the language they would have submitted in were in their language, and then I would have asked the questions if they know for a fact that these persons would have provided the services that they would have paid for, and they would have complied and asked them to submit their reports in our language.
Saying that the reports they would have submitted was in Portuguese?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, and therefore, thank you very much. As regards my original question, would you consider this a high-risk area based on the factors you use to determine what is high risk?
Yes, ma'am, I would consider that because of the amount of monies that are paid out to these airlines as well as the marketing so that we could get more people into Tobago.
And therefore, when last was an audit done?
We have not done an audit recently.
Okay, thank you. One more question I want to find out about that is, what is the timeline, or are payments made to the international airline by specific dates? Are they made periodically, or is there one lump sum payment?
Madam Chair, it's paid in tranches. Yes.
And those transfers are time-specific? Like, for instance, let's say in the fiscal year there are 3 tranches. Are they payable by a specific date?
I think that's still the case, yes.
The last thing is, who monitors the contracts with the assembly and the airlines to ensure that the airlines are doing their part, fulfilling their part of the bargain?
Madam Chair, I think the director for tourism at one point in time, and you have marketing officers who perform those tasks.
So the marketing officers monitor the contracts? Or let me ask then, what tasks do the marketing officers perform?
Okay. Let me say that I am not certain in terms of that monitoring part of the contract, but in terms of ensuring that what is required is delivered, I think there is some relation between the marketing director and there's a transportation coordinator assigned to that division who would treat with things of that nature.
Okay, so could we get some clarification in writing?
Certainly.
Because certainly to me what was said there, looking to see what is done is really monitoring the contract. But maybe as we say, maybe we should get some further definite responses from the divisional head of this.
We will provide that in writing,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you. And I just couldn't help but ask about the processing company of Fish and Tobago, which really seems to be a very laudable initiative. And I had observed in your submission, in terms of developing the capacity of the maritime sector, you all had spoken about training and certification of vessel captains and vessel engineers. Could I ask how far that process has reached?
Madam Chair, I'll provide that in writing.
We were also told that in terms of the other aspect of this company, which is to develop the deep sea fishing industry and that capability, that the company intended to acquire 2 vessels. Can I ask how soon are those vessels intended to be acquired, and what is the process for identification and acquisition?
Madam Chair, given the change in the economic climate, I need to go back to the division to get that information in writing. I am not sure how far or what would be done with regard to that.
But let me ask something. This determination was done in fiscal 2017 or prior to fiscal 2017? Determination to acquire?
Madam Chair, this would have been a proposal that, given that this document was done in January, it would have been proposal coming forward for this fiscal. And I know
So,
in
so,
terms
so the
of
proposal
funding,
would have been done in light of the tightened financial circumstances in any event?
yeah, I'm saying that coming from the end of the last fiscal, we would have received those projections from the company. And it's for the division to assess to determine whether these proposals can in fact be implemented.
Appreciate that, and maybe Mrs. Davidson-Williams, the difficulty, maybe as you say, you're not the divisional head, but certainly the budget would have been passed by the end of October, and therefore I'm sure the divisional heads would have had an opportunity to see what their allocation was, and one would have expected, having regard to what was going on in the financial climate, certainly by January, when your submissions came in, that a reassessment or reevaluation of needs would have been done against wishes. So that, you know, to be telling us in January 2017, when your submission was presented, something which was wished for before the budget, time having passed 4 or 5 months, and no reassessment of that need having been done, strikes me a bit strange, but we'll await the answer. Member Mahabir.
Very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, a follow-up question again on the fish company. A while back, it was customary, visiting Tobago, to purchase processed flying fish in Tobago, processed in Tobago. But I see the focus here is deep-sea tuna. You see, I'm wondering whether, in fact, a feasibility study has, in fact, been done to determine the profitability of deep-sea tuna processing as opposed to what was traditionally done in Tobago with respect to flying fish. So maybe if a feasibility study has been done on this fishing company, FIPCOT, I certainly would like to take a look at it, if you can submit that, so that I'd be satisfied that it, in fact, is the way to go. There is something in economics known as comparative advantage. What you do well, you tend to stay with. And processing flying fish is something that Tobago has always done really very, very well. So I'm wondering whether, in fact, there are good reasons for moving out of this and into deep-sea tuna, which, in fact, may or may not be profitable. But I would like to get the feasibility study if you have one.
I would certainly provide in writing, sir.
Okay, and I just have one more question about this company. In the submissions, we were told that requests for releases are submitted in accordance with strict guidelines, which outlines expenditure. And I would like to find out really what are these strict guidelines, or what are the authority for these strict guidelines that outlines the items of expenditure that are referred to in your submission.
As a company, these are picked up under the current transfers and subsidies. So it's just a subvention that they would be applying for in accordance with the items of the classification of items of expenditure. It's just a subvention to the company that they apply for, and the funding is released.
So again, I ask, so what are the strict guidelines that outlines? What are those?
We would look at whether it's within the allocation and that sort of thing, the Audits and Exchequer Act and the financial rules and regulations.
Okay, so could I get some elucidation of this in writing, please, because it seems to suggest something else. And the last question I have on this is that we were told that the chairman is required to submit audited reports, and I don't know if this is one of the guidelines that Ms. Trim is referring to, so that the chairman is required to submit audited reports. Can I ask, what is the deadline for these audited reports, and when last were the audited reports submitted?
The last audited report was 2015, yes.
Yeah.
FIPCOT's last, the fishing company,
Yes.
their last audited report was 2015.
Yes. And when was 2016 due or is due?
The end of the fiscal.
And they're working on it
Yes.
right now.
They're working on it right now.
Yeah.
So it would have been for 2015, 2016 fiscal.
That they're working on right now, yes.
Okay.
Audited reports have been submitted for 2014, 15.
Right.
And they are working on 2015, 16 at present.
Thank you very much. Okay. And have there been any findings of the 2014, 2015 audited reports?
When I saw the audit report, no, there were no major issues in the audited report, no.
Okay, but there were issues?
Yes.
And could you therefore share those with us?
Yes, in writing.
All right. And are there any other questions that the... All right, so I really would like to thank the Tobago House of Assembly. Before we wrap up, I just want to, Mr. Sandy, I can't avoid asking this, certainly just for the members of the public who are listening to here. You had said that you had brought this contingent in the hope that they could answer as many as the questions and have in regard to what the remit of this inquiry was. Can I ask why you didn't bring the divisional heads?
That's a very good question, Madam Chairman. And honestly, just before you made a statement, I was thinking that perhaps the best thing to do would have been to bring all the administrators here with me, all 10 of them. So certainly the next time around, I'll bring all administrators here who have direct and intimate knowledge of the operation of their own divisions, so that you might have to permit us to bring a larger delegation the next time around.
Well, I'm certainly assured, and you too, that we could accommodate them. So I take your answer to say that you accept responsibility for your choice.
Yes, I do.
And certainly it was not a question of lack of finance.
In that case, we could have ferried them down.
Stage bring this public hearing to an end. I want to thank the members of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Sandy and his team, for coming over and being so enlightening with respect to their operations. Mr. Sandy, I know that time might be against us, but if it's one thing, if the Tobago House of Assembly can't get on a flight to Tobago, you're saying something here that I do think we want to see in public. And therefore, I want to just invite you to take a few minutes just to maybe tell the committee in what ways you feel the committee could assist you all through its recommendations.
Well, first, let me thank the committee for having us here. And just simply by the question you'd have asked, and some of the areas that we were unable to give you the information immediately, that signals to me that we have some work to do in certain areas of the operations of the Tobago House of Assembly. And I'm certain that we'll put our heads together, this team, and get those things straightened out. The committee certainly would want to make some recommendations, and we are looking forward to those recommendations because those will also assist us in moving forward in the way we account for public funds and in the way we operate as a public entity in the space of government in Trinidad and Tobago. So we'd really appreciate to hear from the committee all the positives, negatives, whatever it takes, and we'll certainly ensure that we take on board any recommendations that emanate from this august body, and we will certainly ensure that whenever we appear before here again, we will bring a team that is more suited to answering your questions fully, and a team that will certainly do justice to the process that you're engaged in here. We want to thank you.
Okay, I thank you. I wish you all a safe journey home. I'll hold you to that commitment. I want to thank the members of the public, the members of the media who've stayed with us. I want to thank the members of the committee. This meeting is now suspended.